So, out of the 14 teams in the playoffs, there are some very, very good coaches, including Kyle Shanahan. Where do you rank Kyle Shanahan amongst the coaches remaining in the playoffs?
Now, I know during our very tedious pre-production for this show, you mentioned this question, and it's interesting because it depends on how you ask this question. Because I do think coaching does matter, but then coaching plus the players and what they're doing right now, are we defining it that way? Are we defining it over the history of their coaching process? What exactly are we putting into the best coaches? So
Let
let
me
me ask
define
that
it.
question
Let me
first.
define. Yeah, let me define it. So I'm going to define it the same way I did with the quarterback conversation, which is who are you trusting most for this playoff run? Not who do you want next year, not who is the better coach this year, not who was great 10 years ago. Now, some things do come into account. I think playoff production certainly should come into account. Maybe you weigh a Super Bowl more than a deep run, whatever. That's up to you. But who do you trust to run your team the most throughout these playoffs? If everything is even, teams are even, you just need a guy to coach them. What coaches are you taking above Shanahan, if any?
There's only one, and it's the guy I always say is the path that Shanahan has taken in his career, and that's the man in Kansas City, and that's Andy Reid. To me, he's the only person that I could definitively say is better than Shanahan, just because I've seen him have so much success in multiple places with multiple different quarterbacks and multiple different teams. So to me, Andy Reid is the only person I could definitively say is I would take over Shanahan. Everybody else that's on the list that and I'm sure there's a lot of arguable. I mean, there's some great coaches that are in the playoffs right now. Obviously, Harbaugh with Baltimore. You have
Tomlin's.
McVay with the Rams. You have Tomlin with Pittsburgh are all championship level coaches. However, for me, the only things you're gonna say is this coach is better than Shanahan is because they have a Super Bowl. Shanahan doesn't. When it comes down to X's and O's, when it comes down to getting the best out of their players, when it comes down to actual who I feel like is gonna get the best out of the roster, Andy Reid is the only person that I would say could be higher than Shanahan. But even then, I'm not going out on a limb. I think that even then, I might still choose Shanahan over Andy Reid. But in the discussion, at least I would say is Andy Reid.
Yeah, I mean, I think Andy Reid is clearly the one guy, right? He's won multiple Super Bowls as of late. He's done it with multiple different teams. I think that one's clear. I think after that, you can start to really have conversations and make arguments. I'm also going to put Harbaugh up there. I think John Harbaugh is a fantastic coach. I think Kyle's a fantastic coach, but I think Harbaugh having a Super Bowl ring, doing it in so many different ways. I mean, you look at the different style of offenses he's been willing to bring through the door to make things work. To run an offense built around Flacco and his skill sets, to now doing it with Lamar and his skill sets, I think that says a lot about him. I also just really enjoy his demeanor. There was something about when the 49ers played the Ravens and he got interviewed at halftime and he comes out. The game's still very close at this point. 49ers, I believe, were getting the ball, if I'm not mistaken. And they asked him, they're like, well, what adjustments do you got to make? It's always a real serious, what adjustments you got to make? What do you think happened in the first half? And he goes, first of all, big smile on his face. First of all, Merry Christmas to everybody watching. We appreciate you watching. It's just so calm in the moment. He's not tense. You can tell that team really goes with him. And that doesn't mean that the 49ers don't. I think all teams take on the personality of their head coach. I just really like his temperament, him having a Super Bowl ring and him doing it with two vastly different quarterbacks. and doing it at a high level, winning a Super Bowl with one, potentially now maybe doing it with another. We'll see what happens this year. But I'm going to put Harbaugh ahead of Shanahan as well.
Can I push back on Harbaugh?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I agree with you. I mean, he's a great coach. He's definitely somebody up there. But this is where my pushback with Harbaugh is. If you take away the Flacco ring, which obviously is a big if you take away, and you just look at what he's done uh, with Lamar. Lamar's probably getting his second MVP this year, but they've never made it to the championship game. I think Lamar Jackson is 1-2 in the playoffs. And if he didn't have the Super Bowl in his back pocket, the way that John Harbaugh would be killed for having a top tier quarterback and not having any success to show for it, Jesse, to me, that's where I think the Super Bowls sometimes cloudy what the criticism is, right? So you can say all the criticism that Shanahan has gotten from people is because he doesn't have that Super Bowl ring in his back pocket. But if he did have that Super Bowl ring in his back pocket, I think you're looking at how John Harbaugh is looked at. I do think he's a great coach, but if you're saying, is he maximizing the team that he has? Is he maximizing the quarterback that he has? You have to say, as of yet, and obviously this year is still not done, but as of yet, you have to say it's a disappointment.
Yeah, a couple things that I want to look at, and I'll push back on your pushback with Harbaugh. I think, first of all, I think winning a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco in the AFC at that time was a miracle in itself, an absolute miracle in itself. I mean, you look at the quarterbacks that were in the AFC at the time: Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady. It was a gauntlet over there to even make it, and then they came in. 49er fans, we know this very well. The 49ers were the better team. They should have won that Super Bowl. Joe Flacco played out of his mind for that playoff run. And yes, Joe Flacco deserves credit for that. He was the one actually doing that. But to win a Super Bowl with Flacco says a lot. I think the other thing is this: also recognizing when to pivot on his offensive coordinator was a big deal here, because he had Roman, and Roman is kind of the perfect coordinator, offensive coordinator for young quarterbacks who are very mobile. Saw it with Kaepernick. We've seen it now with Lamar, and we've seen it with a couple others. But there is a ceiling, and for him to recognize, hey, we've hit that ceiling, and I've got to pivot, and then to bring in a guy like Munkin, also to develop a guy like McDonald, who is now the new hot candidate defensively anyways. What he's done with that defense, he started with the Ravens organization, went all the way through it, left for 1 year, went to Michigan to be the defensive coordinator, and came back. He's really done a good job with those guys and knowing when to pivot. I just think also one last thing, being with an organization as long as he has, it's very easy for your message to get lost and fall on deaf ears, and his has not. That team still loves him, plays hard for him, always have, never been an issue. That the Baltimore Ravens have never quit, and they've always been able to maintain an identity throughout all the years of going through different players. And the identity is hard-nosed football, running the ball, solid defense, and he's been able to maintain that. So I think you make a good argument. I think your argument's fair, but I'm still going with Harbaugh.
So you're saying you choose Harbaugh over Shanahan at this moment?
I would, yeah.